Welcome to the ReGen Brands podcast. This is a place for brands, retailers, investors, and other food system stakeholders to learn about the consumer brands supporting regenerative agriculture and how they're changing the world. This is your host, Kyle, joined by my co-host, AC, who's going to take us into the episode.
On this episode, we are celebrating some very, very big news, folks. This week, we launched a new, unprecedented, multifaceted support ecosystem for CPG brands supporting regenerative agriculture, including 2 new nonprofit organizations and 1 future for-profit organization as well. The 3 entities are called ReGen Brands Institute, ReGen Brands Coalition, and ReGen Brands Capital. Now, we've shared bits and pieces of our work on all of this over the past year, but we've not really given you all a full update since August of 2023. And there's a reason for that. We've been quite hard at work building all of this, to say the least. Now, make sure you go check out the updated website at regen-brands.com, read our inaugural State of Regenerative CPG report, check out the press release. In those places, you're going to get a nice, concise, articulate download of what we're doing. But today on the podcast, we wanted to give you a peek behind the curtain. We wanted to show you what went into shaping this vision. How do we build these inaugural entities and strategies? How do we hit some of the key milestones? Where are we going from here? We're not just going to regurgitate the information you'll find in those other places that I just mentioned, even though they are cool descriptions, taglines, and visuals. Definitely check them out. Long story short, if you want to know what the future of our work looks like, this is a must-listen episode. We're so proud to take this massive step forward. And we couldn't have done it without all of your support. Seriously, it means the world to us, and thank you so much. And we hope you're as energized by this milestone as we are. Let's go. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the ReGen Brands podcast. Milestone episode today. Very, very big day for the ReGen Brands podcast and the ReGen Brands universe. So you got just Kyle and myself. So what's up, brother? Welcome in.
Yo, when you said welcome back, it actually had like a whole new meaning because we've had a hiatus. So this really does feel like a welcome back. And I don't know if anybody else is as excited as we are to jump back into the studio. But yeah, I'm excited to dig in and get back into the groove.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a hiatus, a planned hiatus and a needed hiatus based on hopefully what some of you have already seen kind of out in the world this week, as it's all going to come out before this podcast drops. But we've been hard at work, and this episode is to kind of share the behind the scenes look into what that work has looked like for the past year and some change, and the big announcements about kind of where we're going and the future. So we're excited to share it with everybody. Super pumped.
And yeah, I mean, those listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts already see some of the fruits of that work with the new branding. So we'll get into that a little bit more specifically later on, but that's the peek under the tent.
Yeah, absolutely. So the big news is that we have launched the new ReGen Brands ecosystem is what we're calling it. So press release went out this week, new website, new branding, our inaugural report, State of Regenerative CPG report. Like Kyle said, all the kind of recap and podcast assets have been changed and updated to the new branding. So, yeah, just big week for us, and very excited about kind of continuing to do this work. We have not given an update to you all since August of 2023. So quite a lot has happened operationally since we released episode 45. And today, we're really going to kind of share the story of what has happened during that time, and also unpacked the strategy around this new ecosystem, each entity, what they're going to do, how they're going to work together, and basically the support that we're trying to put together for brands that are supporting regenerative agriculture.
Yeah, like AC said, it's been a ton of work, and really kudos to AC and Aaron in particular for the work that they've been doing, in addition to lawyers, accountants, Katie, Daniela, Connor, Hannah. I mean, there's so many people involved in this thing now, which is incredible, and we wouldn't be able to do or announce what we're announcing today if it weren't for all that work in that team. If I missed anybody, AC, fill in the gaps, but yeah, it's been really cool. I mean, Jelly Shot, Third Street, there's tons of partners. So yeah, it's super exciting.
Yeah, amen. That's a good list. I think we'll add to it over the course of the show. Yeah, we definitely couldn't have done this without a lot of those people. And just amazing to be basically relaunching this new ecosystem with these two kind of inaugural nonprofits and a future for-profit coming in 2025. And I went back and re-listened to episode 45, and how our thinking and execution has evolved since then is just night and day. So maybe let's like reset the scene, a little historical context for people, and kind of go back in time, as I think we want to bring people from there to now. Most of you all listening to the show, interacting with us in the industry on LinkedIn, whatever it may be, you know us as kind of operating ReGen Brands, the ReGen Coalition, and Outlaw Ventures, doing basically kind of the podcast and the blog and the newsletter and all that in ReGen Brands, the trade association / coalition building work in ReGen Coalition, and then the investment work that I do in Outlaw Ventures. That is all going away, and that is all being replaced by this new ReGen Brands ecosystem, which consists of ReGen Brands Institute, ReGen Brands Coalition, and ReGen Brands Capital. But it's taken us a long time and a lot of work to get there. So let's maybe go back in time, brother, to August, September, October, kind of Q3, Q4 of last year. Where were we at, and what were we planning to do, and kind of how did we get here?
I mean, honestly, I feel like I should be asking you that question because you just listened to that episode. So it's going to be like, my version is not going to be nearly as accurate as your version would be, but I will do my best. So I'm pretty sure at that time we were looking to launch sort of what we were calling, I don't even know what we were calling it, ReGen Coalition 2.0. Really trying to legitimize the organization that I had initially conceived of back in 2021. Which is about furthering brand collaboration in the regenerative space. We had done our due diligence in talking to the varied stakeholders, not just from the brand side, but from certification verification side, and explaining the concept. We didn't really get perfect, clear sign off from anybody, but we didn't get, hey, don't do this either. Yeah. Which I think we assumed was like, okay, cool. Yeah, we're ready to go. And as it turned out, that was not the case. So, we've spent essentially the year since then doing all this work to ensure that when we did launch, we were actually ready. So that was a great learning opportunity and a learning moment for us. And I know it kind of put us in I don't want to say a tailspin, but it put us behind the ball for a little bit there. But now we actually have a legitimate 501c6 trade organization. Our paperwork is filed for the 501c3, which should be, formalized and approved soon. And this ecosystem is real. So it's pretty impressive to think about where we were mentally a year ago today versus where we are today organizationally.
Yeah, and where we were basically was we thought we were going to operate ReGen Brands as a for-profit media company. We had the 501c6 trade association entity that we were operating the ReGen Coalition under, but we really hadn't launched successfully operationally. And then what we were trying to do with Outlaw was create a venture fund for Regenerative Brands. And now what that looks like is ReGen Brands is just a overarching brand, and ReGen Brands Institute is actually a 501c3 nonprofit doing those publications, doing the research and education that can be, produced under the charitable purpose and given away to everyone. We now have the ReGen Brands Coalition, that is the existing 501c6, but now successfully launched with 31 inaugural members that we're very fired up about and we'll share more about. And then instead of kind of pursuing a more typical venture capital strategy for Outlaw Ventures, we are now pursuing much more of what I would call kind of an innovative, specialized financing strategy advisory firm / services for brands that looks a lot more kind of bespoke to the needs of regenerative brands. But at the end of last year, like Kyle said, most of the focus was really on the coalition and trying to get that off the ground. And we tried a lot of things. We learned a lot. And really across all three of the original strategies, entities, whatever we want to call them, we learned through trial and error. I don't want to call them failures because we have successfully done what we wanted to do with each one now in this different fashion. But we had to kind of go try and ride the bike and skin our knee a few times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really want to hear from you about why we decided to go about this, because when you say it out loud, it feels like a lot. So what was the primary reasoning behind launching a 501c3 and a 501c6 in particular? Because that's relatively unique.
So the 501c6, that is the nonprofit you use for any trade association. So that was the easiest decision that we've come to across this whole journey, because like that was the clearest decision of, hey, that's the entity you use for a trade association. It's a type of nonprofit where if you're doing work that explicitly aids for-profit businesses, you need it to be in that type of a setup. So that was easy, and we kind of had that first with the 2.0 ReGen Coalition, right? What we didn't really know what we were going to do about all this content we produce via the podcast, the newsletter, the blog, and all the content we want to now do in long form, like consumer research, aggregated retail data, the state of regenerative CPG report that we just put out. We did not feel like there was a way that we could do that work properly in the way that we wanted to, in the service of really moving the needle in the industry, in a for-profit model that was actually monetizable, that didn't completely erode our capacity to do the work the right way. So a lot of words in there, but basically what I think that means is like, we didn't feel like we could do the work in a for-profit model the way that we wanted and felt like the industry needed us to. So specifically with the Institute, what the C3 allows us to do is it allows us to produce all those resources, give them away free of charge to the entire universe of all brands, all retailers, all farmers, all investors, and really take a rising tide lifts all boats mentality where we don't have to put anything behind a paywall. We don't have to answer to explicitly creating that content for a specific customer. You know, we are basically, as the experts, deciding, hey, we think this is the most effective use of some sort of philanthropic resources, because that nonprofit will be funded by philanthropic donations, grants, etc. And we will produce things that, you know, can be given away to that entire charitable universe, free of charge and kind of open source.
Very well said. There was a lot I was going to try to add in there, but I think you basically hit all of the nails with the hammer, if you will.
Yeah. And, you know, really, this is not a new model. There's some complexity when you have two separate nonprofits, but there are many examples of organizations that have like sister 501c3 and 501c6s, because they really do separate things and they are governed under separate, you know, laws and implications and whatnot. And shout out to Alex at Baker Hostetler. He is a tax exempt attorney specialist who's really held our hand and guided us through this whole process of getting the organization stood up, getting them governed correctly, getting them filed with the IRS correctly. And, you know, it's going to allow us to do this amazing research and education activity and institute that can be, like I said, given away to everyone under that charitable purpose. And then it's going to allow us to have explicit services for a select group of brands in the trade association, in the coalition, that helps their businesses, you know, explicitly, which is what that's supposed to do. I'll flip it back over to you, bro, of like the coalition, you know, so we kind of come out of last year, we kind of had a failure to launch, right? And I don't know, we need to come up with a better word than failure, but we had an inaugural kind of pseudo launch, didn't really work out. We said, hey, we need some time, we're going to reassess. And really we spent a ton of time in Q1, Q2 of this year, getting that strategy back together and getting to where we're at now, where this thing is a real legal entity. We have brands that are members. We have programming happening where we're servicing those brands and providing value to them through what they get via their membership. You know, from your vantage point, what did that journey look like really this calendar year?
Oh man, it's hard to say the journey. Like my head was going somewhere else, so I'm just going to go where my head was going. But what I can say is that the difference between the way we are operating right now as a 501c6 trade organization in the ReGen Coalition and how we're operating before, night and day. And really what that looks like is me essentially jumping into a shared document, trying to build out an agenda 5 minutes before a meeting, to legitimate like solicitation and intentionality and a team of support, administrative support, what's the word I'm looking for? What are the trainings that Aaron put on for us? Facilitation training for all of the staff who are involved. It's just been, like I said, night and day in terms of the intentionality. In what did the journey look like? There were a lot of hard conversations that we had to have where we finally had to figure out how do we draw some lines in the sand that we've been talking about for a long time. Like, who can we allow into this entity? What verifications and certifications make sense to allow? What is the market saying? What do these other entities feel? How do they feel about this? So we had to really think through a lot of that. And I think we came up with a really good solution there. I don't know if we want to dive into the nitty gritty or not. But it was really answering the hard questions and putting pen to paper, which is not the easiest thing to do. So that was part one. And then part two was the intentionality behind how we wanted to launch the quote V1 cohort, right? We had interest from, I don't know, so somewhere between 70 and 100 different brands potentially who wanted to join. And we decided to go, this is really with AC's vision on leadership, decided to keep it small and only allowing, somewhere between 25 and 35 brands. And we landed, I think, at 31. And that was by design to ensure that we had brands who were super, super hyper interested and believed in the vision. And part two, so that we as an entity and an organization could really focus on delivering value for that initial cohort. And once we get those systems and processes up and running and flowing, then we can open up to more brands in the future, which will likely happen sometime in early 2025. I don't even know if that answered your question or not, to be honest.
No, it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been super cool.
Yeah, and I got a couple places we can go from that to riff off that. One is giant shout out to Aaron Mansica. So Aaron is our inaugural executive director.
To Aaron.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's the man. So he's the inaugural ED of both nonprofits, both the Institute and the Coalition. And really, he and I are the lone kind of two full-time staff members there to start in both of those entities. But Aaron started working with us right around the time of episode 45. So, July, August of last year. And he's, worked with us daily, weekly on this thing since then. And Aaron's background is he helped start Naturally Boulder. He was the ED of Naturally Boulder for, I think, 15 years. He helped spread Naturally Network to the entire country. So all we did to create the first trade association for Regenerative Brands was go get the guy who started the most successful trade association in our industry. I think that's a pretty cool kind of notch in our belt, feather in our cap. And
I'll pause you there. What's also so cool about it is that Aaron is so passionate about the work that we're doing.
Yes.
It's not like we just found this guy and convinced him to help us do this thing. He is so bought into the concept and wants to provide his expertise to this specific group of regenerative or brand supporting regenerative agriculture. It's so cool to see how fired up he is about this work.
Yeah, not to speak for him, but I think I'll do a decent job paraphrasing. He has mentioned to us the energy in the regenerative movement and with the brand supporting regenerative agriculture reminds him of some of the more higher purity, high integrity kind of initial better for you, cleaner brands that spark Naturally Boulder and kind of that initial ecosystem. And he sees kind of a recommitment to a higher level of, I think, passion and, all the things there. So we love having Aaron on board. He's been the gray hair on the team and the wisdom and the person who has, done it once before and, been a nonprofit executive multiple times. So not calling him gray hair by any means from a demographical perspective, but from a wisdom and experience perspective. And we really needed that, as these two kind of younger, crazier guys that had these ideas, we needed someone to help us channel that energy into hardcore tactical execution and getting to certain milestones. And Aaron's just been an incredible resource in doing that.
No doubt. I'm trying to think of you and I trying to write the corporate bylaws or the organizational bylaws without him. It's there's no way that ever would have even happened, So his experience and passion and energy and his work has just been phenomenal. So we would not be here without him.
Yeah. And I want to give the audience even more detail into something you had alluded to, Kav, how do we decide who could be a member in the coalition? And the high level for people to understand there is right now, there is no dedicated community exclusively for brands supporting regenerative agriculture. So we have advisors and consulting firms, and we have other trade associations that are for better for you or organic or natural, and we have the regenerative certification programs, but we don't have anything that's exclusively for regenerative, but also brings together a diverse cohort of regenerative brands with different types of claims and maybe different types of regenerative, what we would call dogmas. And that was always the goal, which I think for us was very important and essential, but pretty audacious considering that's a pretty contentious topic in the space. So we needed something that could have high integrity and could have, quantifiable merit, but also was a big tent that could bring a diverse group together. So what we decided was every brand that joined the coalition had to have at least one SKU that they sold with a regenerative claim that was third-party validated. And third-party validated to us meant that one of 8 potential third parties had verified that that claim had a legit, regenerative claim to it, which the list of 8 pathways was 7 different certifications and the Whole Foods Market regenerative assessment. The 7 certs were regenerative organic certified.
I've got it here.
You got it?
Yeah.
Yeah, let it rip.
It's regenerative organic certified, land market verified, regenified. This is starting to sound redundant. Soil and Climate Health Initiative verified, certified regenerative by AGW, which is a greener world, Ethos regenerative outcome verification, Demeter biodynamic certification, and then the Whole Foods Market regenerative assessment program.
Yep. So every brand, all 31 of those inaugural members, they have at least one SKU that they are in market that has a claim that's third party validated by, one of those entities. And I mean, we're super fired up. The group is coming together. Like it's so clear that our hypothesis was true, that diverse crew has way more in common than they have different, and they need to be working together on these topics. And we've just been operating our programming for 2 months, and that's so evident and clear, and we're making some amazing kind of strides there. But what else would you add on that topic, brother? Anything else on kind of the whole, that piece?
Yeah, I mean, there's a point you just said that I think we should clarify a little bit. Is like the brands who have these different certifications and verifications so desperately want to work together. Rock brands want to work with with Regenified brands. Land Market brands want to work with brands who are just certified by Whole Foods Market regenerative assessment. And this is really like the theory we had, that these brands want to work together regardless of, it almost like, I don't want to get too off topic here, but it's like, we're probably going to want to edit this out. But it's different, like folks from different religious organizations wanted to work together to do something positive for the world. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't have to be X denomination or Y religion. Like we all believe that we need to do this thing together. And this feels like the holding container for those who want to do that work. And it doesn't necessarily mean that every brand from Rock or every brand from Land Market needs to or wants to participate in this work. And that's fine. That's okay. But for those who do, there was no place to collaborate. And what we have built, this ecosystem that we have developed, allows for that collaboration to take place, which truly, in my opinion, is part of the reason regenerative as a movement has been fizzling. I don't want to say it's going backwards, it's still making a lot of progress, but because there's a lack of collaboration between various stakeholders, the movement itself is not moving forward at the rate it could be. So that's what we're trying to do here, is allow that work to take place.
Yeah, we really wanted to be the conduit for trying to spur what all the brands we talked to and all the retailers we talked to were asking for, which was some sort of a more cohesive, unified, collective action, which can be actually, articulated through multiple functions of the business. And when the group came together, I think the focus was all about consumer messaging and marketing and trying to drive consumer awareness and demand for regenerative products, which, yes, that's a huge piece of this. That's always going to be a big piece of this. We want to help spur that work. But what we found, I think, in designing the initial programming and doing the initial programming is there's opportunities that abound in ops and finance and other functions across the businesses as well, where what we're doing is we're really creating the first peer-to-peer support group of brands with a very unique and similar context of how they're operating their businesses. And we also have a nice mix of categories of brands and products in there, and a nice mix of sizes of brands in there as well, where the resourcing, has a diversity that makes it really symbiotic, I think, at least from what we've seen from the first couple of months of operating the programming.
Totally agree. There was something else I was going to say, but I was listening to you and I lost my train of thought. So, which is unfortunate. It felt like it was a good one. Whatever it was good. But yeah, to your point, it's gone. It's totally gone.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears. We can always come back to Coalition. I think before we switch gears, we want to just drive home, huge shout out to Aaron Mansica for his work across the entire ecosystem, but really helping us stand up the Coalition. Big shout out to Hannah Robbins and Connor McMorrow, who are helping facilitate some of our working forums in the Coalition. Those people are amazing. And also big shout out to Katie Finnegan, who is helping us with operations in that entity as well. And then also big shout out to our inaugural board members. Kyle, you yourself, really appreciate all the work that you've done, brother. And then Daniela Jensen at Big Picture Foods and Haley Painter at Painterland Sisters. I mean, it truly takes a village. And we should even add all the members and all the participants so far, because it's 31 brands and over 100 people participating in programming. So it takes all of us, and really just appreciate the commitment from these brands to see that this need exists and to commit, time and financial resources to help and solve it, and to trust us to be the people that could help them, facilitate whatever that solution needs to look like.
No doubt. One last shout out for sure is you, AC. And the level of passion, time, energy, financial resources, everything that you've thrown into this thing, the emotional roller coaster from, episode 45 to now, and coming from somebody I've got to know you very, very well over the last few years. And candidly, when we first started working together, I was like, I think AC sees ReGen as a really good financial opportunity, potentially. And now, knowing you, I think that couldn't be further from the truth about how you feel. And you truly do just want to support this work so badly. And it's been really fun to watch you just I don't want to say put your money where your mouth is, but you are so dedicated to making this work. And this whole thing would not be happening, including today's podcast, if it weren't for you and the work you've put in, man. So you deserve a huge shout out as well.
You got me crying in the club right now, brother. You make me emotional. I really appreciate that, man. It's been really fun, and I think it's been interesting to reflect on that journey personally for me, of when I first got into the ReGen space and I wanted to make a difference, or whatever we want to say. There was this big macro goal of changing the world and helping, healing people and planet, and that still exists, but what the greatest gift about the work that we've done now, in the ReGen Brands universe, is I just have such a strong connection and empathy for the brand founders and the team members of these brands that are really just doing this work. That's what drives me. Those are the people I roll around in bed at night thinking about, how do we help them with these problems, and kind of bring my lunch pail to work every day trying to help them with these problems, because one of the original impetuses for why we wanted to start this whole thing was we felt as though there was a lot more support for farmers and other actors in this thing than these people who also play a very integral role in making this thing work. So yeah, it's been fun to reflect on that, and just what we're getting from that group. I can't understate as that's the fuel to the fire. So amen.
Man, I totally agree. And it's worth mentioning, it's hard to be a CPG founder in general, right? Mm. It is so much harder to be the founder of a regenerative CPG brand for a variety of reasons that we don't have to get into. But in addition to that, even in the last year, the environment in which all of these brands are living in has dramatically changed. It's becoming more and more and more and more expensive to play this game. I just got an email before this podcast, Market of Choice is increasing their ad fees for next year, and that happens every day. This is not necessarily, I'm not trying to throw Market of Choice under the bus. They're a phenomenal retailer, and they do some really cool stuff to help small emerging brands, but everything is becoming more expensive. And when you have a premium product in this world where inflation and price is so sensitive, it's a difficult world to navigate. So I think that really helps to provide some context into why it's so important that we can allow these folks to work together and learn from each other and say, hey, I've made this mistake, keep an eye out for that. Or hey, I've tried this and it worked really well. Let's all go this direction. So yeah, it's just a tough time to be a regenerative brand. I'm super lucky that I work for Kettle and Fire, who is just as a brand, we are crushing right now. And it's so, I don't want to say easy for us, but we have a lot more leverage because of the market share that we have and the loyalty that we have and the incremental value that we provide retailers. You know, we get to negotiate at times, right? Where some other brands don't have that option. So yeah, that's my rant about why it's so hard to be a regenerative brand right now and how things have changed incredibly, even in just the last 1 year.
Amen. No, thanks for sharing that, man. And I think it's a really good segue maybe to do a little bit more of a deep dive into Institute the way that we just did with Coalition. And we've done a terrible job staying in chronological order, but hey, this is the beauty of you and I getting together for a pod. We're just going to go where it takes us.
Right.
So I want to go back to the story, and then I want to do a little bit of deep dive back into Institute. And the story really there is we're gearing up for Expo West. We still kind of have these three disparate entities that were named in episode 45 and have been named already on this podcast. And I have a dream. I have a dream that, you know, we need to get rid of how disjointed and confusing that old ecosystem was with three separate brands.
I just want to paraphrase. This is not Anthony like quoting Martin Luther King. Like he actually had a dream in his sleep overnight. And that is what he's telling us about.
So I have this vision of like, hey, we need to put this whole thing together. We need to kind of co-brand it all under the ReGen Brands brand. Exactly what that is, how that looks, I don't know. And I think I wake up and I texted like you, Aaron, and probably 5 other people. And I was like, hey, man, I had this dream. I need to talk to you about it. I think it's important. And it was like a week or two before Expo West. So thankfully, Kyle, Aaron, and a few other people hear me out. We kind of all aligned like, hey, this seems like a path like we're curious about and we want to chase. And that's really how we kind of just started developing like this idea for this overall ecosystem. And what it also, I think, allowed us to do, which we've done a really good job in the white paper that I hope people will read that's now out, is, or the State of Regenerative CPG report, is no one knows the brands, or no one knows the problems and the needs like explicitly facing regenerative brands better than us. Like at this point, we are the experts on that, like categorically. And what we did was we basically got really good at articulating those, and we said, okay, what are the potential entities, strategies that could create solutions here? And that has really led the development of the new ecosystem, and largely informed, I think, the work of the Institute on that research and education side, because like Kyle was just alluding to, there are some commercial and economic realities that we are not going to change in the short term for regenerative brands. And in America, the best way to try and support those people is through philanthropically funded nonprofits. Now, you can't explicitly do that for for-profit businesses through a 501c3 because that is illegal. But because of the societal benefits that regenerative systems produce, we can produce, you know, market-based research and education and things like what we've done historically, you know, with that societal benefit in mind. So at a high level, what we've really said is, hey, society and really the economic part of our society doesn't value certain aspects about these systems that they should, right? And the best way that we can value them is through this nonprofit where we can produce this information that then is given away to these people as tools for them to use, whether that's, once again, brands, retailers, investors, etc. Because right now it's really hard to realize some sort of added economic benefit in market with the products, with the businesses. So I feel like that was a long monologue, but hopefully that made sense.
It was, and I think I'm going to try to recap it in like very layman's terms, which might be oversimplification, but I think it's good that we have the duality, right?
Yeah.
So the 501c6 trade organization is for-profit brands working together to benefit their individual businesses, right? Mm-hmm. And learning from each other, and you know, it's co-opetition, if you will. And we can't legally, and it is for good reason, you cannot take philanthropic dollars and help for-profit entities make more money. So instead, what we're doing is creating the 501c3 to allow those philanthropic dollars to support the entire regenerative movement.
Yes.
And that will have a cascading benefit for all regenerative brands, not just those in our 501c6. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially why we have these two different organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well said. Amen. And, for us to have more CPG brands supporting regenerative agriculture and doing that successfully, there is just key data, insights, perspectives, learnings, whatever we want to call it, education, like research and education is what I keep calling it, that doesn't currently exist, or it's not aggregated or packaged correctly. And we have to solve those two problems. So, that's not explicitly us doing all of that work. Maybe sometimes it's us prompting that work, or, being kind of the people that publish the key questions that need to be answered, whatever that ends up looking like. We have all kinds of ideas for what the V1 of that looks like. But ultimately, we need a center hub for that. And that's what the Institute is supposed to serve as.
Totally. Spot on.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we should touch on there. That we have the most legacy work output there. So people, I feel like, get what we do, right? We got the newsletter, we got the blog, we got the podcast. Like I said, definitely encourage people to check out the white paper. Shout out to Katie Finnegan there as well.
Not the white paper, the report.
I know. I keep calling it a white paper. They're going to be called ReGen Brands Reports, and I got to get used to that branding. So everyone check out the inaugural report. Shout out to Katie. She did an amazing job as the lead author. Jelly Shot did an amazing job designing it. And Christina Tober did a really great job helping us edit that document as well. But this is really like all 80 episodes of the podcast, all 70 plus newsletters, all 70 plus blogs or whatever is at this point, distilled down into that seminal document that basically is, okay, what's the state of regenerative CPG, and what were the fundamental learnings that we are now taking to start this ReGen Brands ecosystem? Really encourage people to check that out.
Yeah, as somebody who, I've been on just about every podcast episode. I still got a ton of value reading it. It is, it sounds like a giant summary, but it does a fantastic job of distilling down the key points, the most critical pieces of information from every single spot, and putting it in one place. And I think that's the primary reason we're doing this. And I'm excited for this to come out and to see what people think of it.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Where should we go next, brother? Should we go to Capital and just give people a little bit of a preview there?
I think we should. And obviously, I need to prompt that question for you because I don't know what that work's about. So tell us a little bit about what the Capital piece is going to look like, how it's different from the original Outlaw Ventures concept, where it's at today, and where you see it going in the future. Classic Kyle 5-part question.
No, it's good. And they're the right questions for this one. So Institute and Coalition exist. Those entities are formed. They're out in the market. They have bank accounts. We have staff. We are operating those two nonprofits. Capital does not exist yet. So that is coming in 2025. And really the biggest task there to move that forward is we got to go find somebody to help lead it, which I'm working on, and I'm working on how that fits into our strategy. But ultimately the big illuminating decision there was, through all the investment work I've done at Outlaw Ventures and through the massive amount of kind of research and trial and error we did thinking about starting a new venture fund, what we saw was the existing financial products and the existing fund models do not align with what regenerative brands need. Full stop. So yes, we could go execute those strategies.
Tell us why. Why is that the case?
Yeah. Let me just finish that thought real quick. Yes, we could go execute those strategies. We could put money into those things, but we're still kind of shoving squares into round holes, right? We're shoving square pegs into round holes, which still moves the needle, but it's not ideal, and it's not, to me, bespoke or innovative and really industry changing or super catalytic. And to answer your question of why, it's just look, these are businesses that have a very different economic context because of this regenerative work that they're doing. And regular venture capital and regular really debt financing, loans, don't solve for that. So we have to either innovate in how we do equity and or debt financing. We have to find hybrid models. We have to completely replace that with some new model. And what does that actually tactically look like? It looks like trying to either create new financial products, right? So things other than safes, convertible notes, typical priced equity, typical inventory financing loans, or finding financial products that maybe have been used in other industries or been used by other people that are applicable to our cohort of regenerative brands. and then find a way to stack those or stack one of them or whatever it may be into fund models that we can raise large amounts of money into, have a professional fund manager manage and invest in a large enough sample size for us to say, hey, we invested 10 million, 20 million, 30 million into these new innovative approaches, and this works, this doesn't work, we learned this, we should do this in the future, because right now, all we're really doing is just doing a bunch of that in the old status quo, and we're not really learning or doing any of kind of what I would call the financial R&D to figure out what's the future version of funding these businesses. Like, all the brands are doing that. All the farmers are doing that with the regenerative parts of their businesses, right? Like, hey, how do we do agriculture better? And we need to just ask the same question for the financial funding mechanism for the businesses of how do we do that better and aligned with the regenerative part as well.
I think you're spot on, and I want to hone in on one piece specifically because this is probably the piece I'm most comfortable talking about. But as a regenerative brand looks to scale, regenerative brands have essentially decommoditized the marketplace, right? So if you take a brand like Liquid Death, who's super cool, doing awesome stuff, getting less plastic out of the system. But as they go to grow and scale, they have to put more water into cans, which is not significantly complex. There's not an additional certification layered on top of that. But as regenerative brands look to grow and scale, let's say regenerative brand XYZ lands national distribution at Walmart. You know, they've got to figure out how to source certified regenerative grains or, olives or whatever that specific product is. That's going to take time to convert the arable land into those different crop systems. And we're not talking like one harvest. It's potentially like 2-3 years process to get that product up to the level where it can be certified, right? So it is such a different beast to try to figure out how to scale regenerative brands. And to AC's point, the current financial systems do not allow for that sort of time to function, right? This is why it needs to change. This is obviously not my core competency to talk about, but I'm doing my best.
You're always too self-disparaging on this topic. I think you do a good job, and I think you do understand it. And it's mostly commonsensical. And I will say, like, look, there's going to be, if you haven't seen from this podcast yet, like, what we're trying to do is complex. It's not overly complex. It's not impossible. And especially on the financial side, I think simplicity wins. Like, we need to keep things simple, but we also need to be willing to kind of wade into a little bit more different waters of probably higher complexity to solve for these things, because typical financing of a business is just trying to solve for growing the business and profitability. And we're not saying that's not important here. Like, duh, like, we're still going to solve for that, but we're also trying to solve for these other things that these brands are doing around their mission and around supporting regenerative agriculture systems. And, that looks different based on the brand and their growth trajectory and their goals. Sometimes it could be, how do we do inventory financing differently because Emily at Lil Bucks is buying all of her buckwheat in one shot a year? How do we do a CapEx investment into vertically integrated manufacturing because Little Sesame produces their hummus in a very different way and needs to source regenerative chickpeas for that? How do we do equity financing that doesn't need to be on a J-curve venture capital growth rate and, could have a better payoff for brand employees versus just really fast, quick growth for investors and founders? Those are just a few examples of many, many, I think, opportunities we have. But unfortunately, once again, the tools to facilitate those transactions are either unknown or underutilized, and the capital pools flowing into those don't exist just don't exist at a significant enough scale for them to have the market validity for us to say, hey, there's been a significant amount of capital in here. We know how this works. We're comfortable putting another X amount of capital into it. And we need to solve for that for our group, for our group of stakeholders.
You and I have talked about this numerous times, and that was the best, most synthesized version of an explanation I have heard thus far. That was fantastic. It really articulated like the types of opportunities in those three different examples and why it needs to be raised differently. And then, obviously you marry those two within the entity, ReGen Brands Capital, and hopefully that leads to legitimate capitalization of these brands who are trying to do this transformative work.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the new ecosystem, and I think it's important that we talk about the branding of this new ecosystem because, number one, it has been a process knocking this out. And we've learned a ton about the branding process in general. We've learned about ourselves. And when I say we learned about ourselves, essentially that we're still just juvenile children. And we've gone through a handful of iterations, and it's been a roller coaster. So as the lead of the co-branding or the new branding, like walk us through the initial, like what was it that we were trying to design? We'll talk about the main V1, and then we'll kind of dive into where we're landing and why.
Yeah. Well, we've had some really great help along the way, and I think we've ended up with some really good copy and some really good visual system. But the biggest thing I think I learned throughout this process was your brand shouldn't always look the way that you think it should look out in the world. And there is really like important design science and design best practices to convey certain energy and certain personality of your brand in a more implicit way than an explicit way. And I would say to date, we've had a lack of resources, one, and just a lack of know-how. And our branding has been very explicit in sharing our values. It's loud, it's cartoonish, it's lots of different things. It's a little juvenile, like Kyle has said.
It looks like GTA Vice City. I've said that before. I'll say it again. Like I've always wanted to see what I would look like in a video game, and there I am.
Yeah, but I think what we have now is going to really allow us to sit beside the organizations that we want to in a really meaningful way with high credibility and high kind of visibility. And I think our work product has always been at that level, but our visual system and maybe our copywriting maybe has not. And so, yeah, just major up leveling there, and pumped to share it with the world here moving forward.
Totally. And I think V1 was a big learning process for us. And we were trying to design essentially like a hero brand, like a CPG brand is kind of what we were looking to do. And it took us time and talking to other experts to realize that was a big mistake. And I think, AC, the term is, quote, container brand is what we're looking to do, which can be interpreted a variety of different ways. But the way I interpreted that was that, we're not looking to become the hero here. We want the brands within our organization to be the hero. And if we can contain their hero presence and boost them, that's really strategic, like the right way we want to go. So that was like my key interpretation, but I'm sure there are others who want to get, your take on that process and how you feel about where we've landed.
Yeah. It was good. We learned a lot. We made a lot of mistakes. I think the up leveling in legal know-how, in marketing know-how, in branding know-how, in operational know-how, in content production know-how, like what we have done in the last 12 to 18 months, whatever it's been. There's that quote that's like, if you don't look back at your former self and laugh at how bad you were or whatever, like you're not like growing enough. And it's like, wow, like we are passing that, we are acing that. And those would be my big takeaways for that one.
I think it's spot on. And I don't even have to look back 12 months to laugh at myself. It's probably like 3 months, for sure. So yeah, the new logo, everything looks fantastic, and I can't wait to get it out. I know that one podcast listener in particular, who can remain unnamed, has told me, like, you guys really need to change your logo. Like, I want to recommend your podcast to people, but I'm almost embarrassed to because of the way it looks. So thankfully that will not have to happen anymore.
I have gone to in-person meetings where someone has said, which guy am I meeting with from the, like, which cartoon guy am I meeting with from the logo? And you learn through these processes, like, you had what you had for a reason and it served you well, like in that capacity. And then as you transition, as you grow and as you improve, like you need different tools. And thanks to a lot of hard work and some key partners, like we have those tools now. So I think the call to action for the audience is like, let us know what you think. We love the branding. We love, what the website looks like, what the report is designed as, the new podcast logos, the new recap icons, but let us know how y'all feel about it. We'd love to hear about it for sure.
So, AC, we've talked a lot about the changes to this ecosystem and this organization, but let's also discuss, like, what hasn't changed. What's gonna stay the same? Yeah,
good question. So people that know us,
new look, same great taste. What is that version for us?
Yeah. we are definitely still going to operate the podcast, the newsletter, and the blog. So from a content production perspective, we might do more of certain things. We might do less of certain things. They might look a little different. They might sound a little different. But like those are core short form media products that are not going anywhere. Longer term on the horizon for the Institute is more stuff like the report that just came out, more longer form, higher level quantitative research and analysis that will exist in static reports, some interactive databases. We have a lot of ideas there, and ultimately all of it will just come down to how well funded the Institute becomes based on what capital we can raise via donations and grants, et cetera, to fund that programming. But not a ton will change short form content wise. We'll still be interviewing brands. Kyle and I might start doing a little more content just ourselves because the feedback has been really strong there. So more like perspective / roundup content where maybe we talk about recent news or recent products we've tried or hot button topics and how we're thinking about them. We've only done 4 or 5 solo pods. We've done 0, 16, 45, 66, and now this. So this is only our 5th one. I think we'd like to do more of those. But long story short, big takeaway is ReGen Brands Institute will continue to produce the content that you've seen from ReGen Brands historically, and then we will start integrating what we're learning and doing in Coalition and Capital through that content ecosystem as well in whatever way we think is worth kind of sharing in an open source and learning capacity with the broader ecosystem.
Love that. I love the you and I doing some more work together. So far that has been super well received. And another call to action for the audience, if there's something you want to hear us discuss or a topic that you're particularly interested, reach out and let us know.
Good call.
Historically, this is just AC and I riffing. And in some episodes, we've had somebody not show up and we're just like, okay, cool. We're just going to talk for an hour and see what happens. So to have a little bit more seeding from the audience, I think would be fantastic.
Yeah. And I'll basically cover biggest future need for the Institute, and then I'll flip it back to you for Coalition. On the Institute side, we are now a philanthropically funded organization. So we need people to donate. We need to access grant capital. So individual donors, foundations, family offices, anyone that donates to support regenerative agriculture causes, we would now love your support, and I'll be kind of out in the marketplace talking a lot more about that with other people. So that's really our biggest need moving forward for the Institute. We talked a little bit about where the coalition is at. We're off to a successful start. We have these 31 inaugural members. Kyle, bring us up to speed on what the rest of this year / early next year looks like for the coalition.
Yeah, so rest of this year is really trying to deliver value for our V1 cohort, right? I don't know if that's the official name or not, but we should come up with a cooler name.
Inaugural membership.
Inaugural membership. Inaugural is just such a hard 3-syllable word. It's awkward. But point being, we're looking to really focus on delivering value for that original cohort. And, we will open it up for additional members come 2025. We don't really know exactly where we're going to cap it. But if you are interested, reach out now. Let us know you're interested and we'll get you on the short list so that when we do start to solicit for cohort 2, you'll be at the top of that list. And then part 3, we are a functioning 501c6 entity right now as a trade organization because there's member dues, but we're also looking for sponsorship. So if you are an industry service provider, you want to provide some level of support for the brands in this space, please reach out. We'd love to see how we can work together to come up with a win-win solution here that benefits our ecosystem and could potentially bring some business your way.
Yeah, amen. I mean, that entity is all about collective action and collective support for those brands. So service providers, retailers, investors, whoever is interested in working with us in that capacity, that's a proven model in this industry. There's tons of trade associations doing really cool work in a collaborative capacity there. And we want to create that same thing, but specifically for these brands that support ReGen Ag.
All right, so we've covered quite a bit today. There's a lot that we just announced. It might feel overwhelming, but again, it's same look, new, great taste. I'm going to keep saying that because I think it's fantastic. But AC, give us a quick high-level recap. What did we just talk about?
Yeah, and I would just say we tried to give everyone a behind-the-scenes download of kind of how the sausage got made on this episode. But if you just want to see the sausage and read the copy and see the visuals that are way easier probably to absorb than the way that we've packaged it verbally here, check out the website, check out the report, check out the press release that went out this week. Check out the website pages on the Coalition. Check out the website pages on Capital, on Institute. It's all right there. We think it'll be really well articulated and easy to understand. So it's really just check all that out. You know, give us feedback. What do you love? What doesn't make sense? What are you looking forward to? What do you want to see more of? What do you not see that should be there? You know, we thrive on that feedback. We love that feedback, and it's an integral piece of what we're doing here.
You know, this is why we're a team. You know, AC will talk about the website all day, but I'll tell you what the website is. You know, it says ReGen-Brands.com. Head that direction. Check everything out. We super appreciate you. We're excited to be back recording on the pod. Looking forward to getting some more guests in here. And again, share your feedback.
Yeah. Amen. Last but not least, just to wrap up shout outs, I want to give a huge shout out to a couple interns that have been really working with us for months now. I mean, Alexi almost for like a year and Michelle definitely for a few months, but Alexi Ragland and Michelle Adid have been just integral pieces to support all of this work in various different ways. Just two young, hungry people that really care about regenerative agriculture and the planet and human health and all the right things. And we could not have gotten here without them as well. So big shout out to them. Big shout out to all of you that have followed, listened, read, shared, liked, commented. We need that continual support. So please continue to do that. It means the world to us. And it's crazy to think where these two crazy guys are after the first coffee meeting in Bend, Oregon in May of 2022.
Coffee and bison meeting.
Yeah,
coffee and bison.
Since Kyle doesn't drink coffee.
I also don't drink bison, just for the record. I was eating it.
Oh, man. Well, it's been fun. Couldn't have done it without you, brother. Couldn't have done it without all the support from everybody that's been involved, and just so grateful to do this work. So fired up about where we're going with this thing. And just really excited after many months of kind of working in the shadows to share this all with the world and see what they think about it. Yeah,
I was going to say, man, congrats on, again, you've been leading a lot of this work, all of this work. And this is a big day to be able to announce this and unveil this. And I don't want to say put that work in the review because there's still a ton of work to do now. But now that we get we're formalized, we're legit, the ecosystem is real, it's alive. It's super exciting. So again, congrats to you. And I think the whole community is grateful that this is here. So we're super pumped to continue to work to, at the end of the day, like improve human health, improve the health of the planet. And that's really I think it's important to why are we doing all of this?
Yeah.
And I think we both really care a lot about trying to figure out how to make it easier for people to make better decisions. And hopefully this work leads to that.
Mm-hmm. Amen, brother. Well said. Appreciate you, dude.
Appreciate you, man.
For transcripts, show notes, and more information on this episode, check out our website, ReGen-Brands.com. That is ReGen-Brands.com. You can also check out our YouTube channel, ReGen Brands, for all of our episodes with both video and audio. The best way to support our work is to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, the ReGen Brands Weekly, and follow our ReGen Brands LinkedIn page to stay in the know on all the latest news, insights, and perspectives from the world of regenerative CPG. Thanks so much for tuning into the ReGen Brands podcast. We hope you learned something new in this episode, and it empowers you to use your voice, your time, your talent, and your dollars to help us build a better and more regenerative food system. Love you guys.